Hello, Internet. It is Jon-Mark Patterson, the Reactionary Hippie. Hey, sorry for that greeting. Been watching Cobra Kai. Finally discovered that series. One redeeming reason for Netflix, I guess. And I got a little Johnny Lawrence in me. Hello, Internet. Just kind of all new to me, right? I know it's been more than 2 months since before Election Day. I'm not in hiding. I'm not in mourning. Just been regrouping, focusing on the family here and preparing for the next shoes to drop in our COVID pandemic age. I see more economic trouble, businesses stretched to the breaking point. Here personally, we've given up on the local high school and I've moved to homeschooling. If it's all going to be on our shoulders anyway, we might as well pick a better curriculum and see that something actually is learned, we hope. Although I have to say, in a way, I'm almost relieved that President Trump is no longer taking up all the oxygen in the room, and we don't all feel obliged to comment on political events all the time. So I'll keep some political comments short on both the supposed insurrection on the date the Electoral College votes were certified, and on the inauguration itself, which just happened a few days ago, when I record from the day I record here in January 2021. Insurrection, what a strange joke. A joke in the sense of how President Trump goaded his followers on, let them believe silly things, and a joke in the hysterical overreaction to what really happened. There was no incitement to insurrection or a coup. But President Trump was responsible for this sad outcome and this gleeful counter-reaction that he let happen. If he had only been more self-disciplined, put a stop to these problems or stop feeding these dark rumors. I'll say it again. President Trump, he represented a reaction to trends I do not like and trends that I think are dangerous for this country. And he was the only voice with the platform pushing back on those things. But it has to be said that his mistakes and his lack of focus and self-discipline and his inability to institutionalize and bring more people in to help him and build a network to support this very necessary reaction against what our country had become, it doomed the reaction to fail, at least for now. So President Trump, a man with many strengths, with many weaknesses, he let his weaknesses get the best of him. And perhaps there'll be a dramatist someday with the gifts to explore that tragedy. Because it is a tragedy. He had greatness in him and he had terrific flaws too. And here we are. Well, I guess I'll move on to the inauguration itself, right? Dystopian creepiness, sorry to say. I mean, I tried to follow along with people commenting about how wonderful it was and the sense of relief and the poetry and the beauty and all that. Oh my gosh, how far we have come in our conceptions of what's normal and what our expectations are. 4 or 5 years ago, this would have looked like a scene out of a Hunger Games sequel. 25,000 troops, walls and checkpoints to keep all the commoners away, real people replaced by flags and empty symbols and virtual virtue signaling, and the elites of both parties congratulating each other, just hanging out and wearing their face masks and smiling with their rictus grins behind those face masks. Really, just patting each other on the back and promising themselves that now the bad man was gone, the interregnum is over, and now they can go back to business as usual of the real America, which is running the country into the ground as they ruin its middle and working classes with terrible policies. Turn all of its great institutions into self-serving racketeering enterprises. And, while you're at it, make sure you strip mine to get wealthy. All of its remaining wealth through continued financialization, deindustrialization, and globalization. I don't know. I got to stop. But I expected to see Caesar Flickerman and Elfie Trinket up there toasting President Snow and enjoying the party while the rest of Panem was in lockdown. One set of rules for us and one set of rules for the rest of you rabble. Time to move on. But I'm not going to get any more lighthearted. The point here is that I need to make is that collapsing civilizations, and believe me, you live in one, they increasingly become divorced from reality. Civilizations are complex organisms. They build institutions. And those institutions are built to solve problems, to keep cultural memory strong and alive, and to serve the people in that culture. Well, these institutions stop doing so. But instead of being replaced by new institutions that do work, these institutions, they ossify, they harden, and they turn into racketeering operations. Well, what is a racket? It's something that's self-serving for the people who run it, right? It's vaguely illegal usually because it extracts wealth from some people to give it to others. These racketeering operations now distribute wealth to their constituents and to other favored parties, but they don't provide greater benefits to the rest of society anymore. And I ask you, look around, right? Look at your recent experience with government, education, and healthcare bureaucracies. Do you really see things getting better? Do you see these bureaucracies really innovating to make life better and to serve you? Or do you see them pivoting to save themselves, to suck up government money wherever it can be found, and to look out for their own? Anybody out there with children in college? Huh? Did your child's college or university offer a partial tuition refund? Because, well, after all, it only offered Zoom classes, and those are not nearly as robust and a lot cheaper to offer than that rich in-person educational experience that they promised you that massive tuition was worth. No? No refunds? No offers? Sorry. Unfortunately, I've got personal anecdotes about the breakdown of institutions. I have always loved our local post office. I know many of the people who work there, went to high school, some of them, good friends in there. I know they've been demoralized by the run-up to the election, by the pressure at Christmas and a pandemic, by, they tell me, not always good management. But my goodness, the service recently nationwide, 2 weeks to get a first-class letter, more mail being lost than ever. I say it's okay to subsidize the post office. We need to have institutions like that knit the country together. But I just see it collapsing before my eyes and unable to do its most basic functions. To pick another bureaucracy, I was involved in a case to settle a dispute between a divorcing couple. I'm not a divorce lawyer, but I am a real estate lawyer, and they had a real estate transaction, and I was brought in to negotiate a settlement and an escrow agreement. And as part of that agreement, we were to take some of the funds from the closing of the transaction and pay them directly to the IRS to settle a tax debt. And so I wrote a certified letter to the IRS and enclosed the check. I enclosed the voucher statement that the IRS itself had provided. I referenced the taxpayers' taxpayer ID numbers. I referenced the file of their case. I sent it to the office that accepted payments, certified U.S. mail. 4 weeks later, I got back the return receipt that certified that the IRS had received the letter and the check. At that time, I noticed the check hadn't been cashed, so we wrote another follow-up letter to the IRS's customer service office. Neither letter's been acknowledged. Many more weeks have gone by. We've made call after call. The calls are never answered. There's no opportunity to leave a message. The check's still not cashed. It's gone into a black hole. I don't know what's going on. I walk downtown in the city where I live every day. I walk to and from work. I can tell you that the people simply making laps through the downtown, carrying their belongings in backpacks, sometimes dragging suitcases with 5, 6, 7, 8 layers of clothes piled on them, just aimlessly wandering around looking for a place to crash, going back and forth to the agencies that provide meals and daytime shelter. It's sometimes I have interactions with them, some positive, some negative. It's just saddening that the breakdown of society that I see, not just in the abstract or from reading the news, but firsthand in my, in my hometown. I see local bars, restaurants, and shops who have innovated heroically to survive the restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic and the often arbitrary impositions from government. 500 people can be packed into Walmart, but we barely are allowed now after shutting them down entirely, 25% capacity at local restaurants. They cannot live on carryout They can't keep these people employed. They've innovated heroically to serve food outside, to pivot on a dime, to put up tents, and to try to push most of their business to carry out, to deal with these new delivery services. And they're running out of resources. There's not much left they can do. As I hinted earlier, we've given up on the local high school in our household. Completely wasted year, nothing learned. The challenge, I think, is to keep our teenage students from being stuck in front of a screen all day long. Give them varied experiences in interacting with books and interacting with other people and real physical interactions with teachers. But they don't have that. So I could go on. No reason to keep throwing out examples, but institutions are collapsing in this country, and the question becomes, as this vacuum grows, what will fill it? And I'm going to put a positive spin on this necessity, because you always have to deal with it, right? It is what it is. So if these networks we thought we could depend on, if these institutions that got bigger and bigger and bigger and more distant from us, but that we still trusted, start to fail, you have to build local networks. We have to learn new skills. You have to have a garden, keep chickens and other livestock, learn to process and store food. You gotta know and support local farmers, local artisans, local producers, local shopkeepers. You gotta sit down and read and play music with your children. I mean, I'm guilty. I'm watching Cobra Kai. We watch Netflix here and there, but we really try to play and interact and do those things locally as well. Meet more neighbors. Just got to stop depending on these large, fragile institutions that are letting us down. They are on their way out. Maybe there'll be new ones later, but we got to live through a transition time here. So that's the positive side. It'll make us more self-reliant, I guess. I mean, make a virtue out of necessity. But there's a huge negative side, and I got to talk about it. In this effort to hold these institutions together that no longer work, the elites that benefit from these institutions will get more and more desperate. And they're going to tell bigger and bigger lies in a desperate attempt to support their status and their position. And you and I are supposed to swallow these lies and believe them. And that will be a great, great tension in our society, and it will accelerate in the years to come. I guess I better give examples, right? You're supposed to believe that some ragtag group of nuts who got into the Capitol building rather too easily, you're supposed to believe that is an existential threat to the Republic, and that the unarmed female Air Force veteran who was shot in the head had it coming. Do you even remember her name? It hasn't been shouted from the rooftops. Ashley Babbitt. She's not a martyr. She's not a victim. She was someone who was caught up in a tragic case at the wrong time. But compare that to being told that George Floyd is a sainted martyr, and that several, you know his name, right? And that several months of riots that destroyed block after block of cities all over the country last summer, well, that was just a righteous and fitting tribute to him. You're supposed to believe that the 1619 Project, I'm sure you've heard of it, right? Backed by the New York Times, pushed into every school in the country with helpful curriculum guides, awarded the Pulitzer Prize. And for what? For saying simultaneously that African Americans are helpless victims of white oppression, and that the only true and noble players in the American story, and they are the actual founding source of the country. The country was really founded somehow in 1619 with the arrival of the first African Americans on these shores. That's somehow supposed to be a brave refounding of the USA and representative of a deeper truth, even if it's not literally true. Even the feeble protests of liberal historians like the great Gordon Wood, sorry Gordon, a couple of your books are on my shelf and you probably don't need any endorsements from me. He'll say it's a pack of lies. It's shameful to tell these mistruths and to completely distort the reality of the American founding. On the other hand, if you know the actual story, right? If you know about the four broad waves of Anglo-Celtic settlers and their different folkways they brought here, and you know the nuances of the varied and complex worldwide competition between European powers and the cooperation and conflict that settlers and pioneers and explorers here had with varied Aboriginal peoples, sometimes as allies and more often as enemies. And if you know about the slow disappearance in this country of indentured servitude and the rise of a harsher slavery in some places and not in others, ironically enough, established by a 1655 Virginia court case in which a free black man named Anthony Johnson argued that he wanted to keep his black servant, John Kaser, as a slave without an indenture. Well, when he won his case on appeal and the legislature confirmed it, the House of Burgesses, a few years later, it gave us the great historical irony that the first legal slaveholder and the first legal slave in the British colonies that were to become the United States of America were both black men. And if you know something about the varied colonial experience of colonies founded on different bases with, as I said, different folkways, surprising diversity in many areas, then the establishment of self-governance and independence and a new political compact, and then expansion and settlement and war and conquest and varying waves of immigrants, and then astonishing inventiveness, industrial enterprise, individual growth, and incredible social development, all that with 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, with strange backwaters and strange triumphs and terrible tragedies all together. To know and appreciate the sweep of all this and look around at what was built from all that toil and all that struggle, and to say that's just a manifestation of white supremacy that you should feel guilty about if you're a white man like me. And this kind of thinking will not be tolerated in schools or in public life. No. No, you toe the line, and you only repeat the approved lies. I gotta say, I stand for truth and trying to see things as they really are. But I admit, I take these lies and these attacks personally, because my family was part of this story from the beginning, and it has been vested in it the whole way, and I'm not going anywhere. There's a psychological element here, you know. It's this desire to control. It's this will to power. It's a manifestation of power to force people to repeat ever more outrageous lies. It shows you've got control over their wills and over their thoughts. And if you can force them to believe what they know is not true and to suppress on their own any contrary thoughts and hold their tongues voluntarily and make them lose the ability to articulate anything different, then that's real repression. That's real control. That's celebrating power. I don't want that to happen. I'm just a mellow hippie dude, right? I stand for truth. I stand for looking things in the eye, looking at reality, seeing as it really is, and reacting accordingly. But I also stand for pride in my family and my culture and my country and where it came from, with an acknowledgement of its flaws and its mistakes. And I plan to be part of bringing its story into the future, my country's story, my family's story, my culture's story. And I'm not giving up, and I'm not believing lies. I think that's enough for now. These tend to get a little long. But I think I probably will organize my thoughts in some of these future commentaries, which I plan to bring, sorry for the long delay, around this cheerful theme of civilizational breakdown and collapse. And sometimes I'm going to take the supposedly positive side and say, well, here it also creates opportunities, right? If we've got to deal with it, let's look at it the right way, and let's figure out things that we can learn together. And if things are broken, let's think of new ways that we can rebuild them. That's good, right? Build new institutions, build new networks, learn new skills, learn new grit, find a way to survive and thrive. But I'm also going to take the negative side and describe what I see around me, maybe things you see too that we're not supposed to notice, and elements of this process of collapse as it unfolds in detail. We've got to see what it is so we don't have any illusions about it. Okay, it's good to be back. I'm the Reactionary Hippie. I might take my time, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm a lover of truth and beauty, and I'm signing off now and telling you I'm grateful that you made time for me again. Go out there and do your best. Take care.